Welcome to the McGuckin Group question and answer session. We're here to answer your questions. Thank you so much for submitting them. We are going to be talking about talent, strategy, and leadership today. At the McGuckin Group, we help you bridge the gap between your business strategy and your talent strategy. We're career practitioners, not career consultants, so we provide a strong execution and implementation culture with practical solutions. You're going to hear a lot of that today. My name's Erica Jossam, and I'm the Chief Client Officer of the McGuckin Group, and I'm joined by CEO Audrey McGuckin. Audrey, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. Excited about our time together.
Yeah, me too. I think this is going to be a really fun conversation. We had some great questions come in, so let's see what we can. Let's start at the beginning. For those who are new to our community, can you introduce yourself and tell them a little bit about your career journey?
Sure. I am Audrey McGuckin, the CEO at the McGuckin Group. As you can tell from my accent, I'm not originally from the US, but I have been here for 25 years, and this is what I call home, although my heart is where I was born, which is in Scotland. But really thrilled to be running such an amazing consulting practice with an amazing team. A big part of my career journey was when I was with a company called Jabil. And, when I look back, it's just a fascinating experience. I joined them when they were 500 million in revenue. And when I left to start my own consulting practice, they were 27 billion in revenue. And I had responsibility for 250,000 employees. And so you can imagine the big transformation swings that happened in the business, and to be front and center and to get a bird's eye view of those big transitions was just amazing.
Great, thank you so much. Well, that really tees us up for our first question. Why did you start the McGuckin Group, and what were you hoping to accomplish through the firm?
Yeah. I saw a huge gap as I would talk with other organizations and other CEOs and CHROs, and this gap was really around the intersection point between business and talent. Very often, executives will get in a room and they'll talk about their business strategy, but very rarely do they connect that inextricably with talent. And, philosophically and also practically, I saw that really play out in real life. And so our mission is to work with organizations to help them join the dots and connect both of those pieces of work in a way that really superpowers their business results.
Yeah, I love the work we do. It's so
Yeah.
fun. I'm glad I get to do this with you. Well, that really continues to transition us into some more of the technical questions that we got from our community about strategy, talent, leadership. So we'll jump in, kind of transitioning from the who you are in the firm and over to some talent. So, in your opinion, what is the role of the executive team in creating the business strategy?
Yeah. And I think it's important to dive into this because very often they think the role is just to create the strategy. But we really believe that the role is not to just create the strategy. How do they enroll people, and how do they engage the entire organization in their strategies so that people on the shop floor or people in positions 5 or 6 levels away from the executive team really understand what their role is and what they play. We do this thing called dog fooding at the McGuckin Group, which is really about eating your own cooking. And so when we develop strategy, we're always thinking about, and what's the ripple down effect to the team. And so Clarice, who's my executive assistant, and she's actually based in the Philippines, and what she talks about is when she describes her role, she'll say, my role is to manage Audrey's calendar so that she can spread her knowledge and expertise with CEOs and teams in the right place. And so when you hear that, it just becomes really inspiring for people that are setting strategy, is that they can connect their work to people throughout the organization.
Yeah, I mean, on our team, we just saw when we got really intentional of working that all the way down the levels, the engagement through our team really went through the roof. I mean, we have interns on our team, and they could feel far and disconnected to that. But I feel like where we saw them go from good to exceptional was when they were able to connect the work that they're doing as an intern to how it impacts our clients. And that was really neat to see. And we see that with our clients as well.
Yeah. And we're all moving so fast, and sometimes we don't slow down enough to bring people along in the journey. And I think that can be a big miss that we see with organizations, particularly the world we live in today, where time is pretty scarce. And so we love that famous saying from that we use a lot in our sessions from Benjamin Franklin, which is, tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, and involve me and I learn. And it's this big idea of how do you involve the organization in the strategy in a way that's meaningful.
And I think it's really easy to make this assumption that because it's clear to you, it's clear to them.
Yes.
And I think that's where I've seen some missteps as we've worked with organizations, or if they've wondered why it hasn't been connecting, or they haven't seen the jumps in engagement. Usually, if we go, we check in with them on has that plan worked, has it trickled down. That's the breakdown. Is it was really clear to them, but they may not have been using an analogy or an example that was clear or resonated all the way down the organization. So I think checking in on that is also incredibly important.
Yeah, many of the organizations we work with, the CEO will say, darn it, I don't know why they're not clear, because I've told them so many times. And often it's this idea of, yeah, but have you involved them and engaged them?
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, let's go to question number 3. So this is about the talent market. The talent market continues to be extremely challenging. What are some practical things we can implement to bolster our talent and reduce turnover?
Yeah. We know the 4 levers that make a difference in what we call employee engagement, or employees going the extra mile, or employees being inspired. And the first one is the work that I do. Is this the right work for how I'm naturally wired? Some people are wired to be very detail oriented and they enjoy detailed work. Others not so much. The second one, and I've asked this question thousands of times with clients that we've worked with, and just over the decades of doing this work. And often I will ask them, what makes you stay with an organization? And very often the answer is, I enjoy the people I work with. And so the first aspect is the work, and the second aspect is the team and those that I work with. And then the third aspect is the culture. What is the culture like? And is it connected to my values? And is it connected to who I am as an individual? And then we know, this is no secret, and this is not breaking news, that people don't leave organizations, they leave managers. And so those are the 4 levers that we work with organizations on. The manager piece, we work with companies to help build leadership capabilities that are inspiring and motivating. We work with organizations to take a deep dive into their culture and how congruent is it with what they say versus what they do. We do a ton of work with teams. We leverage one of our favorite tools, which is predictive index, and we look at how teams come together. And then we help organizations really think through what is the work and to whom does the work belong? And do you have the right people doing the right work? And so those are typically the 4 levers that I encourage organizations to really think about and say, where are you on a scale of 1 to 10 in each of those areas?
So those can feel like really big steps that somebody has to take but where's a really good place for people to start if they feel like they are struggling with turnover right now, or they're having trouble attracting talent? What's an easy thing that they can do to get started?
Yeah, one of the things I would say is this work is not easy. And I think it's okay to acknowledge that. This work is not binary insofar as you switch it on and off. Also, it can't be transactional. You have to embed it into the culture of the organization. And, one of our dear friend, God rest his soul, Don Sharon, he brought us in to work with Kimball. And, one of the things he said on our last podcast was, I couldn't do this work on my own. I couldn't go fast enough. And we have this famous saying, oh, it's hard to read the label when you're inside the bottle. And if you want to take your time with this work, if you want to figure it out and make a ton of mistakes, go right ahead. If you want to go fast, and if you want to make the right moves, then engage others to help you with that. It's not easy and it's not transactional.
Yeah. One of the things that I love about the way that we work with our clients is really starting with their context and being willing to listen to that, and what are the things that are in place and what isn't in place yet, and what would be the most valuable place to start, and this idea of what is it time for now, in the midst of everything else going on. I just love that that's how we work, and that it allows us to feel like a true partner as we come alongside of our clients, and having some level of flexibility of how that fits within their framework to come along their maturity level or the different things that they are to accomplish their goals. So
yeah, and I think a lot of the work we do has a few golden threads that run through it. But one is what we call differentiation. And what that means is, let's not try and boil the ocean, but let's think about how could we work with the jobs that are really critical to your organization. For example, when we work in the EMS industry, one of the most critical jobs is the GMs, the general managers who run the factories. They typically own 70% of the employees. And so if you have a C player in one of those jobs, that's going to be pretty costly in terms of engagement and turnover and retention. And so starting with those critical roles. When you're in healthcare, what are some of the critical jobs that are really driving value? And it depends on your strategy. Sometimes it can be the sales leader. Sometimes it can be the contracts manager. Sometimes it can be, at the executive level. But where are the critical jobs that have the most impact on the strategy, and start there. And that's about differentiating so that you don't feel like you have to do everything at once.
that's great. Well, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I'm going to take us back to leadership assessment. So we had a question come in that says, do you use assessments and human capital data in your talent work? And if so, what role does it play?
Yeah, one of the things I was really thankful about being raised in an EMS world, or at Jabil, is it was very data oriented. And so what that taught me is you can't really come to the table with the words I think, and you can't really come to the table with words perhaps, and you can't really come to the table with doubt. You have to bring facts. And what we believe at the McGuckin Group is data multiplied by a conversation equals an insight. So we would never rely solely on assessments in science, but it's our starting point. Our starting point is to follow the science. Our starting point is to follow the data. We use a number of different tools that are all highly valid and reliable, that are, industry approved tools, but we start with tools, and one of them is predictive index. We love predictive index because it's simple to use. It's translated into 52 different languages, which means that we can use it with our clients in Taiwan. We can use it with our clients in Poland. We can use it with our clients in Thailand and India. And so it's a real asset to have as a global tool because people can take it in their own language. But it would be foolish to just use predictive index in isolation. How we use predictive index is to wrap conversation and context around it, which leads us to what we call insights. And the insights are really where the gold is. The insights are, and what is the data telling us? And we can't just rely on one data point. The McGuckin method that we use triangulates a number of different data points. One is predictive index. Another one is the voice of the employee. What are their aspirations? How is their self-awareness? A third data point is from the manager. What is their viewpoint? Another data point is from peers. We use engagement data. That's a fourth data point. And then when you tie all of that together and ground it in what we call a development conversation, that's when the magic really happens. And people come out really having got those aha moments that says, now I see it, now I get it. And that can be super valuable.
Yeah. And we've seen, you mentioned earlier when you were talking about talent work or the work that we do, that it shouldn't be transactional and you have to get past the transactional part of the work to really transformational work. And this is one of the biggest areas that I see that happen when we work with our clients, and it's these small but very important changes that they can add into their development and performance conversations that has such a big impact, that changes lives. You see people just kind of light up and come alive in those conversations. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, our last question for today is, what leadership capabilities do you think are the most important in our current workforce, and are they teachable?
If we look at all of the studies, and if we look at our own research with organizations, some of the leadership capabilities that are in high demand but low supply are things like empathy, human-centeredness, vulnerability. It used to be results-driven. It used to be ability to execute. And those are price of admission, and those are just expected. The leadership capabilities that really make a difference in organizations, one of them is empathy. And what does empathy mean? It means the ability to walk in someone else's shoes. It's the ability to put yourself in their world and imagine what that feels like. And when you can do that with a workforce, when leaders can do that with teams, the engagement levels are much higher. The retention levels are much higher. The psychological safety is much higher. The other attribute is vulnerability. And so we're not looking for leaders to necessarily be stoic and have a lot of bravado. We're looking to see past that. And who is my leader as a person, and how can I get to know them? And vulnerability takes courage. Not everybody is up for being vulnerable, and the timing has to be right. And is it teachable was your second question. Absolutely. There's a pretty special way that we build those capabilities with leaders, and you know, at least every other week we're with an executive team, and in almost every session, empathy is either the first or second session. And if it's not the first session, it always comes up in the first session, and it has to be the second session. And so we teach empathy, and we teach it as a leadership capability. And people are never the same after they leave our sessions, because once you've been taught some of the techniques, it's hard not to use them and to walk in the shoes of others.
Yeah. Do you still feel like you run into leaders or organizations that would challenge you that those capabilities are important? Or do you feel that that has changed in culture and that it's more accepted to what's previously been called the soft stuff? Are you finding people
Yeah,
finding it
which
valuable?
is really the hard stuff. And, what I've observed through all of the work that we've been doing with organizations and teams and executives is people have had very personal moments of truth in their life in the last few years. We've been through COVID. Everything was physical. Wash your hands, stay indoors, wear a mask. But actually, what we should have been focused on was mental health. And what we're finding is that leaders got burnt out through COVID. We had a war in the Ukraine that had a massive impact on many of our global clients and the leaders that were working in those organizations. Social media, and we know the impact that has on certain generations. And so what we're observing in the environment is that people's personal circumstances have led them to be much more open around being curious around how might I develop those skills, because I've had that experience myself.
That's great. I think we can all be glad that we're
Yeah. And
seeing
the
that
and the
shift.
one the ones that push back on it, and the ones that don't want to learn it, we don't want to work with them. Are
Yeah.
not wasting our time, because we feel strongly, very strongly, that people deserve to feel connected in the workplace, and they deserve to feel connected to empathetic leaders. And so we only want to work with organizations that may not have that capability, but they're curious enough. We were working with a company a few weeks ago, and the leader pushed back and said, I'm not that sure that's the right skill for my leaders to be learning. And I said, well, if it's not, I'm not sure that you're the right client for us to be working with. And at the McGuckin Group, part of our culture is we have a house rule, which is to speak the truth, even if it's unpopular. Even if the client fires us, that's okay, because we think it's so important to the work and the mission that we do.
Well, thank you so much for being open and truthful in this conversation. I think it was a lot of fun, and I think you gave some really powerful tools for our community. So I appreciate you and for making this space today.
Yeah, of course, it was fun. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for listening. If you would like to learn more about the McGuckin Group, please be sure to check out our website, which you'll find below in the comments. You can also follow us on LinkedIn to stay up to date on all of our thought leadership and insights. We look forward to connecting with you soon.